Hello and welcome to Run TMC. That's the Monday Club, as you all know. It's 12:30. I'm Tony Haggerty. I'm joined by the resident rascal Russell Boyce and the amazing Amy Canavan. It's the day after the debacle before, and the strapline says it all. With 7 wins in 14 games, is it time to talk about Ange? I think this podcast might be a tad negative, shall we say, or positive, depending on what way you fall on that particular fence. But Amy, Livingston 1, Celtic 0, bottom of the table, Livingston 1 point, 1 goal up until yesterday. Celtic go there, terrible record at Livingston, and that record stays intact because they can't find a way to break them down. What were your thoughts?
Disappointing. Look, Kev said it on Thursday. We were on the after show or the post-match reaction, after the game with Real Betis, and Kev rightly said, Kev Graham said Ange is exciting, right? And he's spot on. It's fun. I think his word was fun. And obviously came on the post-match yesterday and went, yeah, it's still fun, but he had no fun yesterday. Like, he's right. What was on show yesterday, and perhaps, a few times already this season, is the kind of nature and by the talent and the players required to implement Ange ball we don't have, and Ange doesn't have it at his disposal right now. But that wasn't a shock, and it isn't a shock. I think I said that on Thursday as well, or Wednesday or Thursday. Postecoglou came out and said, the squad so far has been a constant state of flux since he's walked in the door. So he knows, and everybody knows, that his strongest 11 and the best players to implement Ange ball, they're just not there right now. His Callum McGregor's, his Kyogos, the most desirable 11, they're not there. So to execute Ange ball right now, it's not working. It's simply not working. So the players that was kind of evident. They should still have been able to beat Livingston. Any Celtic side should be able to go to Livingston and really beat them. And I know the record perhaps speaks for itself, that's maybe not as easy. But you're a Celtic player. You should be able to go to a struggling Livingston side. This isn't the Livingston of a few years ago, who were kind of flying high, the buzz of David Martindale. It's not really clicked so far this season. I don't really know why. Yesterday, these players have it in them to defeat Livingston, and he has to implement a system and set out in a shape, a formation, the players that can do that. But so it's not going to be Ange ball, because that's just not the case. It's proven that this isn't going to be. So look, the Celtic players, Ange has to realise to adapt his tactics, his game plan to go out and defeat a side against Livingston, and that's not what he managed to do.
Russell Boyce, I put it to you. Ange ball has to become adapt ball. I have watched a manager in 2 successive games not being able to change or adapt to certain situations. Real Betis, they're 2-0 up. You have to take that and not lose that football match. And then yesterday, I watched a manager watch the same game and his team struggling up until the 71st minute before he attempted to make anything that resembled a change. Now, I believe that these 2 defeats fall squarely on the manager. People might not agree with that, but it's my thoughts. That's what perturbs me, and I want to stress that at no time during this broadcast are we advocating for Ange to be removed from situ or a change of manager. I just want my manager to adapt to changing circumstances in football matches, and I also want my manager to start performing and send out a team capable of winning football matches and finding a way to win football matches. That's all I'm asking, because at the moment, that record there is just not good enough.
No, I totally agree, and I think you've seen both sides of what I was saying yesterday. I mean, the Real Betis one, we had a lead against a better team, and it was a 2-goal lead, and to me, he didn't know what to do with that 2-goal lead, whereas I know people think maybe that's sounding harsh, but the fact is, you have got to then go, right, do we protect this, or do we carry on the way it is? Knowing what our away record is, we've never won in Spain before in a European tie, competitive European tie. So when people talk about the Livingston record, the Spanish one was even worse. I happen to subscribe to neither, because I just think it's all about, when you look at the record, yeah, there's a record, but I always look at the players that we played on the day, the decisions made by whoever was manager in those days, and that's why we lost the match. not because of some hoodoo or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? I'm like, come on. Yesterday was Livingston away. The disparity in wages was 20, 30 times the amount from the Celtic players, even the ones being called upon it from the bench for internationals, and would walk into Livingston's team. The thing was, he was in front in Betis, 2-0 up, like I say, and Sorrow's on a tightrope. He didn't change that. And to me, at 2-0, I would have probably, when Jota missed his chance, that was your warning sign that, right, maybe we'll bring on Welsh and maybe go 3 at the back or 5 at the back effectively, and 3 at the back when we've got the ball. That's just an idea. What I'll give him is his hands are tied in terms of personnel, yes. But he still had enough quality in front of him to get to a 2-0 lead in Betis. That's the thing. He was in that position. He didn't do anything really to change it until we'd conceded 4 goals before the penny dropped. And I find that annoying. With Livingston, you knew at half-time, before half-time, but you knew really at half-time there'll need to be a change here in the shape or the style of football we play, and whatever sub he's going to need to find a way, because, again, I accept they are not the quality of substitutions he is looking for, but they are still better than the quality of substitutions David Martindale had at his disposal yesterday. It's unfair to think that Ange is in a position right now where his hands are completely tied behind his back and he's got no options. He's playing against a team that his budget dwarfs, and whether he's still bedding them in or not, Livingston had started the season with 1 point from 5 games. They went 1-0 up and cruised it, Tony, yesterday. That's the facts of the matter. They were in absolute aeroplane mode, cruise control, whatever you want to call it. So that, to me, the biggest issue I've got, yesterday was worse than Tynecastle. Tynecastle, to me, was a bedding in period, and it came too soon for Ange. We've had enough games since then to see it going backwards as opposed to it better. That alarms me a bit. But I'm going to just quickly say as well, never will you hear the words, we want the manager sacked, but I want the manager to open his eyes.
Yeah. Patrick Murphy comes in, Amy here, our away form, despite the squad upheaval, is unacceptable. Most away performances have been decent, but yesterday we were awful. Trips to Aberdeen, Hibs and Motherwell are absolutely vital now for Ange Postecoglou. Do you go with that, or I'm with Russell? The manager has to open his eyes, because in terms of game management yesterday, David Martindale did it yesterday. Schooled Celtic and how to manage a football match. Played for a draw, got their noses in front, and then said, right, we're not moving. You're going to have to come and break us down. And Celtic couldn't do that.
That's absolutely it, and it's kind of what we were trying to allude to earlier, that any Celtic side should be able to go and defeat Livingston. They may not be an Ange ball player, but they're a Celtic player, and a Celtic player should be able to go to a struggling Livingston and defeat them. So Ange needs to, I'm all for, sticking to your guns and trying to implement a style and whatnot, and that's obviously what he's trying to do. But sometimes you just need to, there's a little light bulb moment and go, right, this isn't working right now. And certainly after an hour, there's always that kind of like magical hour mark, you should be able to realise, like, is this system, style, shape, whatever term you want to use it, is it working? Is it going to break this side down? Are we going to quite simply put the ball in the opposition's net? And after an hour yesterday, as Russell said, to be honest, after half an hour yesterday, it was evident that it wasn't going to happen. I don't know what it is right now. I don't know where this is sort of came from, but like in my house, we always say it's like Arsenal. You're just trying to like walk the ball into the net. And I feel like what Celtic were trying to do yesterday, everything was just trying to be that final little touch in. The Livingston defence, there's a reason why that they've not, won a game up until now. There's under pressure goalkeeper, there's a struggling back line. There's never really recovered since the loss of Declan Gallagher a few years ago. So, have a few shots from distance. And I'm not saying Ryan Christie like every 2 minutes. So that's not going to happen. But, David Timber should be like, if he's getting on the edge of the box, just put someone under pressure, because the walking in, trying to walk into the goal, it wasn't working. Things need to shake up. Obviously the guys touching up on it yesterday, yourself, Russell included, switching Abada and Jota, just trying to face a different defender, take them on. Is he going to show them to the inside, to the outside? That's simple things. And if we're managing to identify that, and Ange Postecoglou or one of the backroom staff have to be. So is it stubbornness? Is it trying to be, this is my style and I'll stick to it? But stubbornness isn't going to get you anywhere. And if the stubbornness is leading to only 50% win succession so far in the league, 3 out of 6, whatever you want to call it, no away wins, you can part it up whichever way you like, then it's not going to stick around for much longer. And right now, as you rightly said, no fans are on the back of Postecoglou calling for his neck or anything like that. But football fans are fickle, Celtic fans are fickle. It won't be long. You can't say, we can wait till January. Winning results need to come. Not saying that it needs to be a 10-goal lead, a 10-point lead, come January or whatever. But to be in touching distance, to be winning games, quite simply, winning games, it has to be a fundamental.
Russell, yesterday, didn't see any evidence of Ange ball, or a plan B, or a plan C, or a plan D. We spoke last night and I made you laugh because I said, in fact, what I seen a lot of was dodgeball, was players shirking their responsibility and dodging the fact that they were just looking to others to step up to the plate. But too many of them did that. And there was only 2 good players on that park for me yesterday, Cameron Carter-Vickers and Joe Hart. And these are 2 new players who seem to have got it right away, know what it means. Hart's instinctive save where he throws the arm out, that's a wonder save. It's a brilliant save, but it's an important moment in the game. And I think it was Carter-Vickers that played a straight ball at one point, wasn't it? And went long. And, and just thought to himself, you know what? There we go, and we got a bit of joy from it. So the team that was sent out yesterday should be good enough to beat Livingston, but too many just seem to retreat into their shell and go hiding. They weren't asking for the ball, they weren't taking responsibility, as Amy said there, just basic stuff like having a shot at goal. If you don't shoot, you'll not score. And tippy-tapping around and then losing it and losing their way, that happened too often yesterday. These are things that you would expect from a Celtic team. You go to Livingston and just shoot towards the goal. Yeah, I'm hearing noise as well. You get background noise, yeah?
I don't know what it is. Is that you, Amy?
It's not me. I don't know what it is either. I can hear it, but
yeah. I apologise for that, but I certainly don't know what it is. I don't know what it's coming from. Anyway, we'll get back to the matters at hand. But Celtic didn't do some basics yesterday. To the defending for the goal for a start, and then just having digs at goal.
Yep. It was evident from early on. I just think, when Shinnie scored, you knew the writing was on the wall. The statements I would say is like, did we ask Livingston any questions yesterday, Tony? You like to ask the question. We never asked the question yesterday, Livingston, at all. It took to that last, as you say, 20-minute period before we seen a corner go direct into the box. And it's like, come on. And funnily enough, I get he has a header that goes narrowly wide, but that was his first sort of involvement in the match. He then does his wee turning shot not long after, and that brought out a good save. We only seemed to play with the sort of urgency required in the last sort of 18, 19 minutes. Now, Ange's comments after the game are quite interesting because he said, I think it was 3 times to Kenny McIntyre on Sportsound about not starting well. I'm beginning to think, I think I've said this to you before, that one of our templates for this being a success is how many we get in that opening 25 minutes sort of, steam train football that we play. Because 2 wasn't enough at Betis away, by the way, 2 wasn't enough. And I wonder if the reason he mentioned it so many times is because the game plan is largely revolved around how quick we come out the traps and how much we pin it on the other team, and how many questions we ask at that period of time. My other worry is, though, of course, from a position of strength on Thursday, we still lost the game of football. When the 25 minutes don't work, we still lose the game of football. We weren't galvanised by Andrew Shinnie's goal going in yesterday. We panicked. That's what happened. Again, when Betis scored the first goal on Thursday, you knew the second was coming. I'm not saying that Nostradamus, like some comments I see, by the way. I'm saying it in the sense of your gut sank. That's what I mean. I'm not saying I knew they were going to score again a minute later, but you had that familiar feeling in you. This might happen. When Shinnie scored, you felt this is going to be a long afternoon. And I'm sorry, but you have to apportion it. Some of the blame now has to be now focused onto the man at the helm, because Betis is okay in the sense that, you were missing 10 first team players, so his options weren't as great, albeit I still think he didn't make enough tactical changes that he could have. Sunday, we still had, despite all those missing players, far better options at our disposal than Livingston had. So, you can't have it both ways. The disparity between Livingston and Celtic is greater than the disparity between Betis and Celtic. So when you're losing both, there's an all-round problem here. Not just playing against stronger European sides for bigger leagues. That's lazy.
Michael the boy comes up and says, 2 up in Europe, good team would adapt to the situations. Betis did it after they went 2 goals clear. That's fair enough. My concern, Amy, is that the manager didn't know how to adapt in both those matches. That's my big concern. Didn't know what to do to change it, to keep what he had in Spain, and didn't know what to do to change it, to get a draw, at least out of Livingston, and that's what's concerning. That's why the microscope and the focus is now turning towards Ange, because I get back to it. The Celtic fans love the Ange ball and the way that it's worked at home. I'm not disputing that, but a 50% win ratio, the fans won't put up with that for much longer, and that's why they're starting to turn and say, right, because Celtic need to start winning football matches. It's as simple as that.
An alternative has to be available, and we spoke about the players at his disposal. It's maybe not great, as Russell touched upon, that the substitutions perhaps weren't made at the right time yesterday, certainly not on Thursday either, but it doesn't always even need to be the substitutions. We can look at the bench, and we're all very aware that it's not the strongest Celtic bench, but it can change things that happen on the park. It can change the system. Like we say, you could swap Abada, you can swap Jota as well. It's just simple things like that, just shaking things up, even looking like that we're not just sticking to the one way, and that, if you can't enforce change if you're just sticking with the same sort of mentality. So it's not always about the options on the bench. I think it's just nothing's even happening on the pitch. Player intuition, I don't know if that's even still a thing, because it looks like that they can't just even take that on board themselves. So as much as I do agree that we do have to, start now questioning Ange. There's a difference between questioning him over a performance yesterday and calling for his net. Just because we're throwing a little bit of criticism at his way, it doesn't mean that we're now calling for him to lose his job. By no means of that. If it was any other manager, I believe that he'd be receiving the same criticism, if not more. But a lot has to be put on the players as well. You've got experienced players there. We've talked about, a few months ago, weeks ago now, God, it just feels like months, when Joe Hart took the initiative and was speaking about the long balls in Europe. So maybe that could have been implemented a little bit more yesterday, but there's something not clicking. I don't know what it may be, but there's certainly no plan B. By the looks of it yesterday, there wasn't even a plan A. It was almost just, right, these 11 guys are going out on the park, and what happens, because there was no real, no real system, no real desire, and I think it was just a bit lost, to be honest.
Russell, David Krings comes in here and he says, did we expect any manager to come in and win every game? True success takes time, and it may have to get worse before it gets better. Don't know if you subscribe to that, but even just down to a basic, Russell, whatever Celtic plan was yesterday, it wasn't working. So see, even as in a desperation form to rescue a point, would you not have sent someone like Cameron Carter-Vickers up front and played off long balls, second balls, try to win balls around the penalty area? You're chasing a point, a loss is, potential disaster, but you're trying to do something to affect the outcome of a football match, yet Celtic and Ange seem to do nothing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tony. I mean, it's sadly, we play in a league, and I've said this to you a few times before, when it's unique. I'm not saying it's poor. I'm not saying it's brilliant either, by the way. But the SPFL to me is a unique league, and it's just plain total football every match won't be able to cut it to win enough games to win this league title now, because you've got a rival there that has got stronger and know how to mix it. We are going to have to find a way of mixing it. Now, the issue is up top, the lack of options Amy talks about. One of the decisions I would have made would have been to have Giakoumakis on the bench. Right, I'll tell you why. Because we talk about a lack of fitness. I read on Twitter by a Greek correspondent or agent or whatever it was, Giacomakis did his full pre-season at VVV Venlo. So he's not quite sure how he's so far off the pace. Bolingoli played 13 minutes in pre-season for Celtic and was thrust into the starting lineup when we had several other options in that position. So I'm trying to now look for consistencies here, not even seeing that. Secondly, when we talk about options, all right, now, I don't want to put this all on Postecoglou's door, but there's two sides to every debate. See, and he's on record saying this numerous times, I don't really take anything to do with outgoings of players. I just look at the playing squad that I'm dealing with right now. I'm paraphrasing, but he said that on a few occasions when asked about potential departures. Well, see, when you've not got anyone else around you, Ange, and you are on your own, you might have to sadly find, I know you can't invent time, but somehow fit into your schedule, finding out who's going to be leaving, because to let Odsonne Edouard go, arguably your best player, Giacomakis to me looks like the replacement, even though he's coming in, which no one's even talking about, at a fifth or sixth of the fee. But he had a good season last year in the Eredivisie, I get it, right? But you also lost Lee Griffiths through politics, and deservedly so, that's fine. But he needs replaced too. But if you're not paying attention to the outgoings because all you care about is the training ground, then you'll reap what you sow when you've only got so many options at your disposal at Almondvale. You cannot have it both ways. If you take nothing to do with the transfer strategy, and because you're all about the training ground, then don't moan about the players that then are there and who aren't. You can't. And I'm not saying he has moaned about that, by the way, but it's just when you look at the options, a lot of Celtic fans are saying there aren't enough. To me, it'd be very basic to go, whoa, if I'm losing both Edouard and Griffith, I need two back in, if not three. And so if you've not got those options because you just take nothing to do with that, and you've not got one ally as a director of football or CEO, because obviously the relationship deteriorated with Don Mackay, whatever we're led to believe, then, there has to be looked at both sides of it, Because see if a manager doesn't pester that board, the one thing you can assure of, Tony, is they won't do anything. They'll quite happily not spend a penny. He's going to need to force the issue. And funnily enough, that was Ange's words at the start of, the sort of beginning of his tenure. He says, perhaps I've not been forceful enough in my message to bring in players. That's on him.
Russell raises a great point there, Amy. Giacomakis, the due diligence on Giacomakis, and we're led to believe that he might be some 3 weeks away from fitness. How has that been allowed to happen? How have Celtic been allowed to sell Odsonne Edouard? And regardless of what you think about Lee Griffiths, personal issues aside, it's still a player that can put a ball in the net when required, if needed. And this was a needs-must situation. It's reached that point because Kyogo being out of your team has just basically rendered your attack pretty, I wouldn't say useless, but Ajeti's there, but Ajeti has his limitations. We saw it yesterday. He had one header, I think, and that was his only real involvement in the game, or one shot that was hand behind. So you have to turn around, and as Russell said, if you're letting two go, you have to bring two in, surely. Be forceful about that, because it took an injury to Kyogo to realise we were pretty lightweight in that area, because Giacomakis isn't fit. And why was that sanctioned, that signing sanctioned, if he couldn't come in and hit the ground running? The mind boggles at those kind of things.
The mind certainly boggles at that, then you do have to question, what sort of state, why did that, like you say, that sort of inclusion get drafted in quite at that time, because there was also a lot of talk. Remember, it got announced really, really late on transfer deadline day as well, even though it kind of been a done deal, or we all sort of thought for a few days. So then why wasn't it brought in those few days quicker then if this state? So the Giacomakis one is a bit of a worry. It's a bit of a concern as to why he's not match fit. As you say, he's had a decent pre-season. I've not got any problem with Lee Griffiths being away, I'll be perfectly honest with you. If anyone watched Dundee Derby yesterday as well, he's not what we, really what certainly what it used to be. So in that sense, I've not got a problem with Griffiths not being a part of the club, but I do understand what you mean. If you're letting two go, you've got to be bringing two in.
You've got to be replaced, eh?
Yeah, and I understand, obviously we didn't nobody, you can't foresee an injury to Kyogo the way that obviously it's happened and for how long, but we should be perhaps looking from within. There was so much talk about Kevin Nisbet. I'm not saying that he was the answer, but then how much money does Celtic actually chuck at him? How keen were they to really get in that other striker? Because I do personally believe that Kevin Nisbet would have been a decent addition. I do think he's a decent player. He's obviously off international calibre now as well. I think with, decent coaching at Celtic, I think he could really go on to do well. But we say it time and time again, how little do we actually look within our own market? But it doesn't necessarily need to be Nisbet. That's just because there was a lot of talk around him. But there was a lot of talk around a lot of strikers. So why did we only pursue? It's not like you can never really not have enough, because you have to. Although I've just said you can't foresee an injury to Kyogo, we're obviously not going to see that. But a manager and coaching staff should be thinking, we need cover in this area. You always look at those charts that kind of kick about on social media now. You look at, like squad depth, and it's like 3 players under a position. Celtic have nothing near that. And I'd love to see somebody like draft up a template of that, because it's quite worrying how light we really are. You're not promoting from within. There's no youth players really that are a striking option. Certainly, I'm trying to think the last one that's really probably came through, maybe Jack Aitchison. And I think he's now down at Forest Green Rovers, if he's even moved on from there. I think he's maybe even moved. So it's been a long time since even somebody's came through the ranks of a calibre that they could really, stick around. So there is a worry going back all the way back to Giakoumakis. Why is he not match fit? But it's again, as the comment rightly says there, it's a long time till January, 4 months. But we can't keep really moaning now, because what's done is done. The players have been brought in, which are going to be brought in. Nobody else is going to be brought in before January now. So it's kind of suck it up.
Mark says there, January, long way off before any signings, Russell. And my thoughts on that, we exist and we play in the here and now. We have to just make do with what we have, and I agree with Amy on that. But we have players that should be capable of beating Livingston. When we strip it all back and get back to it, we should be able to beat Livingston. Home or away. I know our record's terrible at the Tony Macaroni, but that's neither here nor there. Every one of Celtic's first team players would walk into that Livingston team. Every one of them. And every one of them that took to the field yesterday would walk into that Livingston team.
Yep.
So, you cannot escape it. And that's why we are putting the early record under the microscope, because it falls on the manager. The manager said he's a football manager. He's happiest in the training ground and, in the football setup of the operation. So he's underperforming in the football side of the operation then, isn't he?
I agree. I totally agree. And, I think the record so far it's patchy. My biggest concern with Sunday, I've got to repeat it, is it's worse than the initial defeats to Midtjylland and Hearts. That's what's my biggest concern, is that's actually what yesterday was a million miles off it. Whereas you thought the other matches at the beginning of the season that were narrow defeats, you felt, well, not maybe it's a bit early to judge because, Dane Murray was playing and things like that. Now, though, you look at that team and you're going, well, it's stronger than where you were before. You've had now a further 2 months to work on the training ground. We do have victories under our belt. And I'm actually seeing it. I'll be honest, I thought yesterday was a regression from what we'd seen before. I know people are saying it looked the exact same as last season. Well, here's another thing. And I don't want to be sounding like, but it does look more and more baffling the more you think about, why did you take the job under the circumstances you are? Yes, you can be extended some sympathy for said circumstances, but we're all grown men here and grown women, and we can go, well, no one twisted your arm and, held a gun to your head to sign for Celtic, You signed under the terms of you will not have any backroom staff, and you don't, and if there's been jiggery-pokery with that and the goalposts have moved since he's signed, that's another, kettle of fish altogether, or whatever the saying is. But that's madness, But right now you're looking at it going, you've got the same. Celtic's the exact same now with Don Mackay leaving, setup wise, as what they were last season. It's just Ange swapped in, Lennon swapped out. Now, if you do your homework, you would look at Celtic and what were the failings last year, and what were one of the reasons for it, and what was the sort of analysis from outside Celtic as well as to why it didn't work. And it wouldn't have taken long to find out Neil Lennon didn't hire any of his staff. That would be a priority to me. And one of the, and bear in mind as well, you would be aware that Eddie Howe was offered, you know, his backroom staff and then half his merry men as well. You know, Eddie Howe was coming with, I don't know, 15, 20 folk. Like, so surely you'd go, right, okay, I get I wasn't first choice, but can I at least bring a couple, please? You know, from that to that is a slap in the face. And again, I feel sorry for him being isolated. I appreciate he's probably having to do double the work to get his methods across because he's not got go-to guys also, you know, pushing the same sort of strategy. But also he's got to go, well, I did kind of sign for this, you know. This is what I signed up to. And that's where my sympathy ends a wee bit.
I have every sympathy for him in that sense that he's not been able to bring in his backroom staff. I totally agree, Russell, with that. And quickly, here's a word from the boss man. We are 34 subscribers away from 15,000 on YouTube. Subscribe to be entered in our monthly prize draws. October's prize is a signed and framed Bobby Lennox print.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I've seen that print and it's cracking. Yeah, I mean, Russell raised a good point there about backroom staff and stuff like that. And we do have sympathy for Ange in those kind of terms. You know, he has kind of been stuck with Gavin Strachan and John Kennedy, not through choice, and he's had them maybe foisted upon him. But do you think that's a big thing for Ange moving forward now, that he has to get his own guys in, his own go-to men, as Russell says?
Well, it was almost, you know, kind of guaranteed that, well, it certainly came across that way, that Postecoglou thought it was, you know, going to be like the next step, basically. Once the window closed, the next step would really be, you know, getting in his own staff. I can't remember if it was Natasha who was perhaps at the conference, at one of the press conferences when he said that. But it's definitely, you know, been well documented that he was under that sort of impression. He's came in and really been dealt this sort of hand and stuck with this hand. But I'd like to think that if he got his own guys in, that it'd be easier to implement something. But in the same way, the fact that Kennedy and Strachan then aren't part of Ange Ball, why are they not offering, you know, like an alternative needs to be going here? These are guys, we keep talking about players, you know, that know the league inside and out, and Russell spot on that this is sort of a division like no other. You can call it whatever you want. So nobody more than Kennedy really knows what this division is like. Why is he not going, look, this is a tough venue sort of thing? Maybe it's not the free flowing, roaring, whatever you want to call it, sort of style that should be implemented here. So in the same way that we're calling for players from within, we need to be talking about, you know, the coaching from within. Is, you know, Kennedy suggesting these things and is Ange just not listening? Well, that's something obviously we'll never know. But you'd like to think that Kennedy would be offering that differing opinion to Ange Ball, to perhaps more than what he knows, what he played in, what he's coached in, and would be offering that, you know, alternative, that plan B that we're really referring to.
Patrick McCluskey comes in. Russell, Ange just came into an absolute shambles of a club. He's got no support network behind him and having to deal with the Lennon-Lowell mess. He is the football operation. That's the problem.
Well, I think there's an element of truth in that. No two ways about it. I also believe Ange is a big boy. In fact, I think Ange would be the first one to laugh and scoff at the fact that he would sign a professional contract with the club not knowing what he'd signed up to. I actually think he'd be offended if you were to suggest that. So he didn't walk in wearing a blindfold, you know. And Celtic's issues were well documented in the past year because it was the biggest swing of domination in Scottish football perhaps ever, from 9 in a row and being so far ahead to 25 points deficit in the title race. If that's not going alarm bells, why is this happening? Then, you know, you've signed the papers all giddy. I think that's an insult to Ange, to be completely honest. When I think of it like that, I think he knew it was taken on. I think he believes in himself that he can get this sorted. My advice to him would be get help, and get help soon, because you are going to need people around you. You are going to need, because right now, I think Amy's right. If John Kennedy's not going to be the guy going, do not try and play like that at Ammanville. The pitch is terrible. You know, they're notorious for their style of football as well. They're maybe not the best, to say the least. In terms of technical ability, it's going to be a completely different type of matchup. My wee brother phoned me last night and he says, Ange is going to need to learn to play the fixture. And I thought it was a really good term. And I don't think we've seen that yet. And I actually think when we look back at a lot of the ACSOM shows, a lot of those who've been very much in the Postecoglou camp have alluded to, he won't change, he won't adapt. I'm beginning to think, what's good about that? And maybe they were just saying it matter of fact, fair enough. But my memory was different, that was a good thing. I was pretty sure the narrative that was getting pushed was, on Twitter, on social media, whatever platform you were on, was he'll not sacrifice for anyone, and that's a good thing for Celtic. Well, I think he is going to need to do, my wee brother said so poignantly yesterday, he's going to need to learn in Scotland when you're at plastic pitches like Almondvale against, not the best team in the world, but will play ugly, you're going to need to play the fixture.
Amy, a facet of that was the fact that Ange changed the defence again yesterday. 3 changes he made, and there's no continuity in defence. Guys can't strike up partnerships because it keeps chopping and changing, and no surprise that they keep losing bread and butter goals. Goal yesterday came from Turnbull, lost it in midfield, but Welsh is caught napping when Shinnie takes his touch and before he knows it's in the back of the net, that kind of thing, So we keep repeating the same mistakes, but it's a permutation of different defenders. And ball and goalie being in that starting 11, there are no words for me personally. It just shouldn't be there. At the expense of the likes of Starfelt and Ralston. I don't know what Ange was thinking. I don't know what was behind the motivation behind that, but he called it wrong. And the defence is now causing Celtic their biggest issues because they're leaking goals right, left and centre, not only to good teams, but poor teams as well. Like Livingston, who were bottom of the table with 1 goal and 1 point. Can't stress that enough at the start of it, up until yesterday.
It was a recurring theme last season as well. I remember at one point, I think it was probably around the January mark then, I think it was 36 games in and it was 33 different formations. We rattled on about it so much last season that it was always the defensive, the pairings would change, but it was also more because of the goalkeeper merry-go-round, they had the 3 different goalkeepers basically just on repeat.
The tail on the donkey.
Exactly.
That's what it was.
Total lottery. So we said it then and you can say it now, it's forever going to apply that consistency is key. You're trying to build relationships, partnerships. The comments are flooding in that, it's all about he's got a squad of new players. Well, you need to give these new players time. You can't have Carter Vickers playing twice with Starfelt and then with Welsh. You're just damaging that relationship when it's still so young. And I know maybe perhaps you can flip it and say, well, he's still trying to discover his strongest partnership and whatnot, but you've got to give it a bit of time. So I totally agree with you there. And consistency is key. It was the same last season, and it'll be the same this season, it'll be the same next season.
The Bolingoli decision, Tony, was bizarre. Utterly bizarre. There was no rhyme or reason for that to happen. That he's done. I don't know what he must be doing in the training ground. But when you look at all this match fitness, up to match speed debate that we have constantly about so many other players at Celtic, you name them. McCarthy wasn't up to it. Turnbull last season wasn't up to it. Ajeti couldn't get up to the whole season. Griffiths has been about 2 years. Yet Bolingoli does 13 minutes pre-season. Looks the most unfancied player. He's not even included in the Europa League squad. Where's he coming from straight into the team? What's the logic behind it? I presume, you see Bolingoli, you think Montgomery must be playing further forward or something then. But what are you doing to Montgomery's confidence? Scales emission, I understand a wee bit more as there might be a better in period right now, because I do believe, without disrespect to Shamrock Rovers, he will be at a step up now in training that will take him a wee bit of time to get used to. That's brilliant though, because I believe that I'm sure I'll give him every chance that he can. But to bring in Bolingoli out of nowhere, to me, firstly, underestimates your opponent for a start, which is a thing you should never ever do. And laughs in the face of the exclusions of players based on being up to match speed that we've heard from various managers over the years. You know, and if the other managers are right, then Postecoglou's got that one wrong. And again, the Bolingoli one, when you see it, I'm not going to harbour it, but Giakoumakis comes to your mind straight away. How's he not fit enough to play 15, 20 minutes if this isn't going right? Fire him on the bench. If Bolingoli's fit enough to do 90 out of nowhere.
Yeah, you mean you looked at the bench yesterday and we banged on about the lack of depth in the squad, Amy, But basically, we have two players missing, main players granted, Kyogo and Callum McGregor, and everything has just seemed to have fallen apart. It's really fallen apart. There's no cohesion, there looked no structure yesterday, there looked no plan. Ange ball was nowhere to be seen, but there was no ball, nothing ball. It's just I couldn't get my head around the fact that team, those calibre of players, played so badly and played so badly for 90 minutes. They could still be playing just now and they would not hit the target, they would not score. Just never looked like it. We're so far off it. And then you say to yourself, well, how did the team prepare a trip to a place which is notoriously difficult? You find well they would be in a really hard game. How did they actually set their stall out in midweek and prepare for this game? What did they concentrate on in training? And then all of a sudden players are getting parachuted in from nowhere. It beggars belief, really, doesn't it? For me, it does anyway.
You can say what you want actually about Bolingoli's performance yesterday. By no means was he the worst player on the park.
No.
But as you say, he's been parachuted in from absolutely nowhere. He's not even in the European, the squad list sort of thing. So he's came from the total dark, and that it just oozes confusion. You can talk about McCarthy as well. Then, that's an interesting one, isn't it? A lot of money was spent on him. So far, certainly not up to bill. I understand that he's obviously still struggling with COVID or the after effects of COVID. And again, Kevin Graham speaks really well about it, considering he's also a guy who's just went through it himself, so he understands the lasting effects and impacts it can have. But then, if he's able to start yesterday, then what was the holding back to him on Thursday, when we really thought, this is actually probably a better game for him, where he's just going to have to sit back and defend. He's not going to be asked to do anything too creative, burst forward, try and create anything. He's simply just going to need to try and protect the lead here. So there's a little bit of confusion, because you're asking him to do two totally different roles between Thursday and yesterday. So it's not one of these ones that you can say, oh, well, he performed bad yesterday, but now you want him to play Thursday. Well, you were asking him to play a totally different role if it came on Thursday, trying to defend the lead, not try and create something like it was yesterday. Obviously, losing the talisman, like you say, of Kyogo and McGregor, but that, of course, it's going to have an impact. I'm not saying that, but injuries are going to come and go. It's just a fundamentally any team, any season, you are always going to have players out for injury. It's a shame, obviously, that probably the two most key elements are out right now, but again, these things happen, so you can't really be dwelling on it too much. But this is a Celtic side, you should be able to say that, right, these Celtic players would walk into almost any other team in the league. That should be the same for any Celtic side at any given time. And certainly any Celtic player should be able to walk into a Livingston side, and that is no disrespect to Livingston. But it's just the nature of the league, it's the nature of the game, it's the nature of the budgets, to be honest. But if you look at that yesterday, you wouldn't certainly say so. Like, we can dissect every single performance, as you say, but it's a bit of a concern.
The thing is, Amy, when Livingston scored, it didn't galvanise Celtic the way it should. That's what I'm looking for here as well. I want Ange ball in full flow, and we've seen it at home. It's been electrifying. I'm on record saying I think we could maybe score 10 goals at home, so don't think this is all one-sided, against Postecoglou. He's made me believe that we could put 10 goals past the team at home this season. I generally, because I think it's wave after wave, and it's brilliant to watch. But what also is important, as well as style of play and how the ball's passed about the pitch and what rate it's passed at and how many opportunities are created, is attitude and application. All right? And when Celtic, you think of your favourite Celtic team, Tony, probably be Martin O'Neill's would be mine, right? In my generation. They used to go a goal down. Of course they weren't. They weren't invincible. You know, they would go goals down away from home. But that G'd them up. It gave, and I'm not saying they won every game in the back of that, but by God, did they put in 120% and do everything possible to try and then get that result back. We didn't seem to get our backs up at going a goal down yesterday. And that really frustrates me. You know, when you should be insulted by that, you should be frustrated and you should say, we're nipping that in the bud now. I didn't see an attitude change yesterday.
And also as well, Russell, you have to, it's not always about what you're doing on the ball, what you're doing off the ball too.
Of course.
You know, and as you talk about attitude and application, you know, and they're two of my big buzzwords, I use them a lot, you know, on the post, because it's true, you know, but they just didn't seem to adapt to any changing circumstances yesterday. And they forget that the fact that we've got, as Amy said, injuries happen, players get injured, star players get injured, but you have to cope better online, because you still have a team that's capable of, or should be capable of, mounting a challenge to win the title this season, stroke winning the title this season.
Let alone beating Livingston.
Yeah, correct. And again, back to, it's no disrespect to Livingston, but as Solomon Monday Grundy says, opinions on McCarthy. You know, McCarthy looked off it yesterday, didn't he? He looked woefully off it yesterday. But again, if it's COVID related, then so be it. Then you say to yourself, if he is genuinely struggling, then why was he put in there from the start yesterday? You know, I asked the question, why did they start with him yesterday? You know, could have put Beaton in there or whatever. You know, it's just limited options as you had. You still had options. And it was very early on and apparent that McCarthy was struggling. I don't know what you thought about that, Amy or Russell, but I thought he was struggling. You know,
I thought his form fell off a cliff after 40 minutes. I thought at the start, I thought he still battled hard, and I liked the bit of dig that he had, because I think that was shown enough throughout the team. But in terms of actually up to pace for the match, probably was still a wee bit off it, hence why that you've seen him in more sort of 50-50 challenges than what you would like to. That's almost a knock-on effect. But see, particularly, let's just say the second half performance he put in, he was passing. I thought he played a bit from memory, second half, you know, as opposed to playing with fresh legs. I mean, he was passing the ball without his head up. Now, the James McCarthy I've always associated with, and we all watch a lot of English football, really, it's in your face all the time. He plays with his chin up, Tony. You know, he gets the ball and he's already looking. He's always playing with his head up. And I thought at times he didn't know where other people were in the pitch, and his passes weren't. They weren't even like, you know, near misses. They were 4, 5, 6 yards away from the, you know, whatever target. But I'm not convinced he actually knew who he was passing it to. He was just passing in the hope there was someone there that second half. His form fell off a cliff in that second half. And you're right, if there's COVID issues there, then by all means, don't start him then. Do what you did on Thursday. But this is, again, a lack of consistency. You had faith in Sorrow on Thursday against a top team. You didn't have faith with him the following Sunday against bottom of the league. You know, and ironically, we panned Sorrow for his performance on Thursday. I thought he came on and had a decent impact yesterday with his forward pass to Ayeti in particular, a first sign of a bit of direct football.
Well, Bill McCabe comes in, gives the manager a season. You all spoke about patience. Now you want to hang the man. I don't think Bill's been listening to what we've been saying. He had come from ACSOM, where there used to be ACSOM crew. Bill, we said at the top of the programme, we don't want the manager sacked, but we just want him to win football matches and discover a way of winning football matches. That's been the whole thrust of the programme. Nobody's want to hang anybody or get anybody sacked. Terrible choice of phrase of words as well, Bill. We'll get back to it. We said at the start of the programme, we don't want the manager sacked because there's a lot of what he's doing that we're loving and we're liking, but we're putting his record at this moment in time up for scrutiny. That's fair enough. It's fair comment, because he can't be exempt from criticism because he's not getting the results that are expected of Celtic, Amy. Is that right?
Absolutely. You know, it's kind of what I said as well, just because we're throwing a little bit of criticism, and it is a little bit, because it's not overpowering, it's deserved as well. If you can you can break it down, right? No, really, any of us perhaps expected, certainly before kick-off, none of us were really expecting a Celtic win against Real Betis. I think we were optimistic for a point, but it was because what unfolded in the opening 25 minutes, and then you thought, right, now it's disappointing if we lose from this position. But before the game, none of us were really had that high expectations. But you've got every right to have high expectations going into a game against Livingston. And I don't care about the hoodoo or whatever it may be, or unable to play Livingston. The fact of the matter is, it's Livingston and it's the bottom side in the SPFL. Don't care who they are, don't care where it is. So there is a right. Celtic have that right. Celtic fans have that right to to have optimism and to believe that you should be able to go into that game and pick up 3 points. It's not a crazy suggestion. So that is why criticism is getting thrown in that direction now, because I think a lot of people stuck up for on the opening day against Hearts. They're like, right, it's a tough venue. Tynecastle is notoriously tough for Celtic to go to, and it was it's a newly promoted side, and they were all up for it, and blah 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 blah. There's always kind of been a little bit of an excuse, but there was nothing really yesterday that warranted excuses. It's Livingston, so I don't feel that the criticism is too much. I think, like I say, any other manager would probably be experiencing exactly the same, because it's just because you want the best, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, Russell, I totally agree with Amy there. I don't think their criticism today has been over the top in any shape or form, is it? I
cannot be bothered with having an invincibility cloak and someone immune from criticism who's a Celtic manager, because no one wants to accept that they maybe doubled down too much at the start, and they now don't want to lose face. I find that sad. Yeah, by all means, back your manager. Of course we're going to back the manager. We've all said we want him to stay in position, but there's a few tweaks we would make to his philosophy right now, and that is based on negative results that we have all seen over the past couple of months. The record speaks for itself. 7 wins from 14, 3 out of 6 lost in the league. We have to highlight that the guy in charge at the end of the day is, as someone else said earlier, the head of football operations right now. Well, we will look to the head of football operations and continue to critically analyse whether they're doing well or whether they're doing poorly. If that's too much for people and they need to use terminology like you're hanging the manager, you're sacking, you want the manager sacked, then you're not joining in the debate properly. And I would advise you to watch the match back yesterday, watch it back, and then come back to me and tell me what you thought the positives were, or what you thought Ange did brilliantly yesterday, and what you would like us to discuss on a Monday show the day after another defeat. What is it? What? You've got to just be real here. I think there's a bit, Tony, if I'm totally honest, we got a bit of notoriety before the season kicked off because we were underwhelmed slightly by the manager, or perhaps not as overly excited as what many others were. And people want to hold that label against you now. Whenever you do critically analyse, they want to go hark back that and say, oh, you've never liked him. I mean, you almost want this to happen. Stuff like that's really, really petty. No one was more frustrated than me yesterday. Well, I'm sure there maybe was, but I was raging, mate, at the result yesterday. Believe me. I mean, Charles Sweeney comes. I know he always leaves top job in the comments, so fair enough. Are you 100% behind Ange, panel? I mean, I think it's fair to say we all are, by all means.
Yes.
But that will only remain if he does something to change it a bit right now. The term I would use is he needs to learn how to mix it.
Well, I'm 100% behind him because I paid money to go and watch that yesterday.
Yep.
And I wasn't happy with the fare that was served up. So I find questions like that pretty disingenuous. We have proffered a different opinion from day one. It doesn't mean we want this manager to fail, Amy. We're all Celtic supporters. Of course we want the guy in charge to win matches, and it's his job to find a way of winning matches, and that's what we're dissecting here. You have to find a way to win a match. You have to find a way to break down a stubborn Livingston defence. He didn't do it yesterday, and that's where our microscope was featuring on, and it's not for the... We've lost 3 games out of 6 league games this season. Every manager would get some criticism if that's what's happening. That's his record so far. So we're quite right to discuss this, whether it be positively or negatively. And there have been positive, because we have came on this programme after a Monday and we've had big cheesy grins after the 6-0 wins. You know, Charlie McGarvey, no one's getting slaughtered. Every point made is valid. The same was used to defend Lennon last year. Look where that got us. It's constructive criticism. Thank you, Charlie, a man who's clearly listening to what we're saying. Amy, we are all behind Ange. We desperately want them to succeed.
50% success rate for any Celtic managers, really for any manager in most top jobs, is totally unacceptable. I think, is it the worst league start in 23 years? I think it's 98, yeah, season after the 10, so, or stopping the 10, obviously. You know, that is allowed to be discussed, dissected, and obviously the fact that it's the worst start in 23 years, it means it's not a very good one. So it means that it has to have criticisms, and critique will, you know, transpire. So I just find it quite astounding, you know, that I understand, obviously you can say new manager, new philosophy, new this, new that, but there comes a time that you have to be able to, you know, sometimes just go, right, this isn't the plan right now. Plan A, great, but there always has to be a plan B. And as much as you can praise the 6-0s against, you know, St Mirren, Dundee, you equally have to criticise them getting beat 1-0 by Livingston, because the 6-0s against them at home, then you can't just have a bunch of 6-0s or 5-0s, 4-1s, whatever you want, high scoring Ange ball at home, but then go and get, you know, absolutely nothing on the road. That's not how a successful league campaign works. 3 defeats already this season. I think it was 5 in total last season. And, you know, we're saying last season was a total and utter disaster. So, well, we're on track for an absolute capitulation then. So it's worrying in that sense. But by no means are we then going, right, we need to, you know, clear the board, get everything started all over again. It is constructive criticism because we're fans, as you say, Tony. Everyone just wants the best for the club, but right now this isn't the best. Yesterday wasn't the best, so that's why you have to talk about it.
Pat O comes in, Russell, ACSOM, do reason constructive criticism. It's needed. I think that's
all it's about. Yeah. It's all it's about. If you want to love bomb every single show and love bomb it and say, do you know what? I seen what was happening yesterday. I seen a philosophy. I seen brilliant football, and we should never have lost that game. If that's what you want to hear, that sugar-coated stuff, then I'm not really going to be part of that, because that's just not, to me, debating football properly. And I certainly think the man at the top, Paul, doesn't want us to be coming on and giving anything but honest opinion that we can back up. You know, that's the thing. As long as you can back up what you're saying, then that's fair. And people are going to disagree. That's fine. But don't put words in people's mouths, you know, such as sacking managers and things, because that just is not the agenda here whatsoever. What we need him to do is adapt and change slightly going forward. And I think there could be good times ahead. I really do. But the sooner he makes that change, the better. Because the record right now, I think yesterday Kev said, as long as we get 90 points this season, we should be in the mix. We're on course for 57 right now. All righty. So if you don't want us to be talking about that, then, you know, I just don't know what it is you're looking for. I think Kev Graham's ballpark 90 points made sense to me as to what would keep you in a title fight. You know, I think 90 points, that's a realistic sort of barometer of where you could be to win a title. But as I say, right now we're on course for 2/3 of that. So big changes need to happen, you know, especially with the away form. We've got to call that.
Yeah, agree with that, Amy, that at this moment in time, I mean, the saddest fact about yesterday was that Rangers, who haven't been firing on all cylinders, dropped 2 points, and Celtic couldn't capitalise on that, you know, by putting up a substandard performance. You know, it was very limp, and you know that's another thing. And Russell talked about not laying a glove on and being 25 points behind. You know, you can't have that happening again, or else you won't win the title and you won't be anywhere near it.
We've got to take advantage of slip-ups. You know, it was analysed well yesterday by the guys in the post-match, Russell, Kevin, Paul. But it's as simple as that, you know, you need to capitalise on it, especially if you're not going to be laying gloves on Rangers when you actually face them as well. So you need to take advantage of the slip-ups. They can afford right now to not even be playing that great, because they're not, you know, I know that there's fans of Rangers right now that they're a bit worried about the state of their play. You know, things aren't going all too well. I think if anyone watched their European performance the other night as well, it was really, really, really poor. So there's worry there. But you sort of sit here as a Celtic fan, you're like, God, you've not really got that much to be worried about, because Celtic aren't going to be posing a threat. I certainly don't see any threat right now. So you need to capitalise on the mistakes when they do occur from Rangers. And again, it's an opportunity missed. Hope it's not one that Celtic end up ruining, but who can say right now?
Well, that's been ACSOM, positive, negative, whatever spin you want to put on it. But stress for the final time, we are all behind Ange. We want him to stay. We want him to be a successful manager. Russell, Amy, you'll second and third that, won't you?
Yes. And happy birthday, Henrik Larsson. 50th.
Yes, indeed. Got to bring that up. It's the King of Kings' 50th birthday. Yep, for all you out there that enjoyed the King's 7 years, 242 goals, 315 games. I know, because I described them all, Russell. You know,
yes,
I did.
Mate.
Yes, I described them all as part of the Daily Record pull-out when he left the club.
That was good.
An arduous task, but a labour of love, and I got it signed by the great man himself. So wonderful souvenir. But yeah, we'll end on a positive note, eh? The King of Kings, happy 50th birthday. And this has been ACSOM. It's been the Monday Club. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for watching.